Welcome back to the final part. Yes, the final part of the best films of my life. Had to re-record this because when I watched back the old one, I was just exhausted. So let's get straight to it. And we'll start with 2009. 2009, much like a lot of the years from this period onward, I'm missing a lot of what would be considered the top movies of that year. It's only in the past couple of years that I think I've seen more of the big movies than other ones. But 2009 was a good year all the same. I seen Avatar in the cinema. I loved Avatar at the time. I thought it was really, really good. It was, that 3D movie. And while I quickly tired of watching 3D, the glasses just took away from the experience of watching the movie. They were always kind of felt like I was adjusting them or otherwise. So that disappeared a little bit. Moon was out that year. I really enjoyed Moon, Hurt Locker, and Inglourious Basterds, one of my favourite Tarantino movies. But my favourite movie, I'm a sucker for sci-fi, so it maybe comes as no surprise that District 9 was my favourite movie of that year. That incredible world building that Neil Blomkamp did, in taking what was very much a sci-fi premise and putting it very much in this dystopian future world. I just thought it was really really well done, and it was as interesting as it was entertaining and good for most parts of that, and I absolutely loved District 9. 2010, well, 2010 for me is pretty much the battle of the animated films. While there were good films out, like a lot of people will say Social Network, I think maybe my dislike of Facebook as a company actually overrides what I think about that film. Although I just thought it was very good at the time. There's no doubting that it is a very good movie, but I don't know, it doesn't resonate with me the way the other people seem to do. King's Speech was out that year. Curling was out that year, which I've done a video about on the channel as well, which I really enjoyed. And Shutter Island. But it really came down to two animated movies. So How to Train Your Dragon and Toy Story 3. And for me, Toy Story 3 has the bit of a stronger emotional resonance about it. That scene at the end, I watched in the cinema with my daughters. And I was genuinely worried. I was genuinely worried for the characters. I was genuinely worried for what was going to happen, which for a Pixar movie, I thought was very unusual. And that film has such heart. That kind of thing about Andy leaving home, that stage of life. You could relate to that as an adult, maybe an awful lot more than what the kids could relate to the toys. So for me, Toy Story 3 is the best film from 2010. 2011, tough year, this one. I mean, Rango came out that year. The Artist won the Oscars that year. I think, pretty much seen as a down year, although, like I say, some films that I haven't seen. But it came down to two. It came down to Midnight in Paris, Owen Wilson's part in Woody Allen's film. I really loved that movie. It's one that has a pride of place, maybe, with the family. That's one that we both enjoyed, or that we all enjoyed. But my favourite film is a Koreeda film, and it's I Wish, the story of the two young boys and a family who'd been split up and live in other parts of the world. And it's just like most Koreeda films in that it has strong emotional ties, it has great storytelling, and it also has a world that you just want to live in, and it has people that you just want to know. And between the characters and the story, I just think I Wish is one of those 5 out of 5 star movies that I wish you could watch for the first time again and again. 2012. 2012's a great year. Dark Knight was out that year. Sorry, Dark Knight Rises was out that year. Argo was out that year. Django Unchained, again, another Tarantino. I like all the Tarantino movies, to be honest, although none of them, apart from Pulp Fiction, have won that kind of best film of the year. Probably says more than anything else. Hunger Games, Life of Pi, Looper, Moonrise Kingdom came out that year. I think Moonrise Kingdom is great. But again, another film that I seem to like a lot more than others is David Russell's Silver Linings Playbook. Again, Jennifer Lawrence, Bradley Cooper. this sort of romance film, and it's not your classic romance film about two people that have got issues, let's just say, in their lives, and how they fit with each other, and all the anger, etc., that came along with it. I just thought it was a really interesting and different take on what would have been a romantic comedy. In fact, there's nothing really romantic comedy about it other than the kind of overriding premise of the film. But I really, really enjoy Silver Linings Playbook. Which takes me to 2013, which, as a year, I really struggle with, actually, because I think this might be one of the first years where I came down to performance over, maybe the movie. In some ways, there's another Korean film there that I deeply love, like Father Like Son is in there. Maybe one of the most melancholic, kind of thought-provoking Korean films that there are. But it really came down to two films. I mean, Monsters University, etc., came out, but it came down Wolf of Wall Street and Dallas Buyers Club. And Wolf of Wall Street was a film that I wasn't expecting to like. I kind of thought that Leonardo DiCaprio's character was just, from the trailers, etc., that I'd seen, not that I tend to watch too many, but I just thought, God, I'm just going to hate this character so much that it's going to take away from my enjoyment of this film. And as it turned out, it didn't. It is so brilliantly played that you couldn't help but find it riotously funny in parts where it was meant to be funny, and then despicable in other parts. Wolf of Wall Street is a tremendous movie, and I remember thinking to myself, God, in after years, I can't believe that DiCaprio didn't win for that and ended up having to win for The Revenant, because while he's great in The Revenant, I don't think it's as good a performance as Wolf of Wall Street. And then you remember that the Best Actor's performance was won by Matthew McConaughey that year for Dallas Buyers Club. And Dallas Buyers Club is my choice, because I do think that DiCaprio was just slightly less than McConaughey there. I think McConaughey's weight of performance in that entire movie carries what is a very sullen, dry, dark movie for the most part, and transforms it into something that's just utterly, utterly wonderful. 2014, here's the year where I have two movies that are almost impossible to split. And so while a lot of people will say Interstellar and a lot of people will say Birdman, etc., there are a lot of very good movies that year. In fact, you could even include John Wick. I could see why somebody would put John Wick down as the film of the year, because John Wick was totally engrossing. I remember the first time I watched John Wick, started watching on 12:30 one night, and then just was wide awake by the end of it. But it came down to two films, Whiplash and Boyhood. Hard split, those two films. In fact, they might be the two best films of this entire decade for me. But they happened in the same year. And when I could relate to Whiplash, because a lot of my genesis as a person is kind of in that kind of heavy music training and how cutthroat that world could be. And I know Whiplash takes it to the extreme, but there definitely is a thought of that in many music academies and even music groups, in young age groups as you go up. So I could really relate to it. And Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons just have this incredible dynamic that, again, is just, you can't take your eyes off it on screen. But Boyhood, Linklater's Boyhood, for an achievement in filmmaking, but I think that undersells it, because that story of taking the same people, shooting them over the period of what would be their early life, kind of belies the fact that you've got a really great movie in there as well. Patricia Arquette's performance is probably the strongest in the entire thing. But that genesis of a family as they adapt and how their circumstances change over time, and how what once seems like a great idea and great circumstances often just falls apart in the big scheme of things, I just thought was utterly incredible. And while the story doesn't actually tell very much other than chronicling people's lives, I just thought it was absolutely dynamite. 2015, good films that year. So Lobster came out that year, Spotlight came out, Big Short, Bridge of Spies, The Revenant, that it's talked about previously, and The Martian. Now, if you would have said book, The Martian as a book is just I think brilliant. I think the film falls a bit short, mainly because of my knowledge of the book and the fact that they dumbed it down in my mind and took one of the most important impression points or plot points of the book and kind of dissipated it out. So I can't really follow along and say that I love the movie for that much of a reason. But Alex Garland's Ex Machina came out this year, and I didn't watch it at the time. I've watched it in subsequent years, and it is all the things that I thought The Martian as a book was, which is smart, very well done. Again, very much a character piece between the three lead actors. There's not really many other people on screen at that stage, and it stands in the performances of everybody that's in there. And while disturbing in parts, kind of brilliant in others, I think Ex Machina is a film that has definite rewatch value as much as it is impactful the first time. 2016. Lots of good movies in 2016. So we're getting to the stage where I maybe seen more movies than I had from previous years. I kind of got back into the way of maybe going to the cinema a bit more. Manchester by the Sea's out that year. Uranium, the anime, it's a great film. Hidden Figures out that year. A Monster Calls I really like with Felicity Jones. Certain Women, Kelly Reichardt's Arrival, etc. But my favourite film is what I would say is my kryptonite maybe about movies, and that is musicals. And La La Land came out that year, and as a musical, I just think it's brilliant. I mean, Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone as two main characters are very likeable. I think they're kind of weird choices for a musical, especially Ryan Gosling, in that he can't really sing. He's a good dancer, I'll give him that. Emma Stone, the other way around, I would say. I don't know. They aren't the Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, let's put it that way. But what happens is you get this incredibly colourful, incredibly clever musical in how it's shot and how it's framed and how it's constructed as a piece. And you get a lovely story, which is bittersweet, kind of come the end. I just adore La La Land and could watch it every day of the week, I think, as it goes. So 2017, what a strong year 2017 is. It has The Phantom Thread, which I think is PTA's best film. I adore Phantom Thread. I've seen it many, many times. Blade Runner 2049, I think is amazing. The fact that that film was any good to start off with is incredible, but the fact that it's as good as it is, and quite possibly better than the original, depending on how you view it. Baby Driver, Hounds of Love is an independent movie that I like a lot. Get Out that year. The Endless was that year. The Endless nearly won it, I think, as a piece in independent cinema, and one that I watched through Arrow Video, their release. Benson and Moorhead become some of my favourite filmmakers by both. There's something in how that film is made. I know obviously they're in it, so that kind of brings you, closer into the relationship with the filmmakers. But a really strong movie, but it did not win, and it didn't win because it was up against one of the giants of 2010's world cinema, and that is The Handmaiden by Park Chan-wook. Now, some people might say this is 2016, but it was released in the UK in 2017, so I'm going with that. Plus, it would have been up against La La Land, and I think my brain might have exploded if I had to make that choice. But The Handmaiden is just a period piece, said about a girl who goes to a family to look after them, but with an awful lot of other motivations going in the background. It is just utterly fantastic, and I did think when I seen Old Boy many, many years ago that it would never be topped as a piece by Park Chan-wook, but I have to admit that I just think by the time The Handmaiden finished, I was just so blown away that I just couldn't believe both the visual treats that were on film before me, and also how much I utterly enjoyed the journey that went along with that. The Handmaiden is my choice for 2017. 2018, tough a year. Zama came out that year. I've been working on a Lucretia Martel video for I don't know how long. It might never come out because of the amount of time that I'm putting into it and how much that comes. I've already done Rita Athevena Gomez's Portuguese Woman. I've done a video on that on the channel. Three Buildings Outside Ebbing, Missouri was that year. Green Book was that year, which I really like. Burning was out that year, which I was lukewarm at the start, but there's another film I cannot stop thinking about. And in fact, if we'd have been another 2 years down the line, I think almost certainly Burning by Lee Chang-dong would be my favourite film from that year. But I'm going to give it to Hereditary because I've seen it earlier on this year, and as a genre piece, for somebody who would say they don't really like horror films, even though I have a couple on this list, it was amazing. It was just amazing. Toni Collette's performance is just out of this world. I mean, the storytelling and the sinisterness of that movie. And it's a horror movie that I could watch without necessarily being absolutely scared out of my pants. And an awful lot of people seem to say that the fact that it was scary is what it gives them. But it's scary in the right ways. It's scary in the tense. It's not scary in the just jump scares. It creates a sense of dread throughout the whole movie. And I dearly love it. And 2019, nearly there. I mean, I could list the list of 2019 films that I think are good or great. Ad Astra, John Wick 3, Joker, Knives Out, Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Lighthouse, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, which is great, but they all lose to a Chinese film that I've seen this year called So Long My Son. And So Long My Son, again, just one of the most gorgeous movies. I've talked about it previously in one of the watch lists, but as the quote on the box says, it's a film that finds your heart at the start of the movie and then just repeatedly stabs at death as you go. It is one of the most emotive movies I have ever seen, and deserves a Blu-ray release over here and not just the DVD that will have. Gorgeous. And I could say that's it, because I really haven't seen anything from 2020. I haven't seen any of the streaming movies that are there. I just spend too much time watching other movies. But let's just say Hamilton the musical that was put on Disney Plus this year is the best thing that I've seen that's been released this year, and leave it at that. Thanks so much to the many of you that have been watching along with this series. I really appreciate the comments, the response videos, and the time that you've put into watching this series. I hope you all have a great Christmas, and I'll speak to you all again soon. All the best. Bye.